How you doing? My name is James McKernan. We're at York University in the Department of Film, and we're going to be putting together a little studio set. I'm Mike Cattini, also at York University. And so this is one of Film's small studios, and they're going to be doing some lighting in here. So they just want a basic box set. Doesn't have to look pretty, so that they can teach the students how to light it and to shoot it. These flats are well loved. They've been around a very long time, and you know, they'd never be used in a studio where you need to have proper walls. But for teaching purposes, they work just great. So what we're going to be doing, let's go to a wide shot so you can see everything. We're going to be taking 12 feet wide. You can see the seams. Typically flats are 4 feet wide. And we're going to be pushing that back 8 feet, so there's an alcove. There's going to be a window on that wall, a window on this wall, and the door here. This here is actually a rolling flat. It's something called sometimes a wild wall. And this window we're pushing back with this, so the window is a little further back on the wall. We're going to add some flats to the side there, and what we're going to focus on is how to take scenery apart once it's been painted, how then you float walls down when you're done with them, how to deal with seams that are ugly a little bit. There's not a lot we're going to be able to do with it. And in a film studio, how to deal with making a door work the best you can, especially when it's not a wooden floor or a studio floor that you can screw into. This is concrete and there's parquet floor on it. And yeah, so I think what we're going to start with is Mike is going to show us how to break apart these flats.
Okay, so we're going to be separating these two flats, which are already joined. Jonathan's going to be helping just by bracing the ladder that I'm going to be on. When you're separating two flats like this, you can see this is not the prettiest seam. But sometimes when you are separating two walls, you have seams that are really nice, and you don't want to wreck both of the flats when you do it. So generally what you want to do is that you're actually going to just take a knife, and you're going to slice that seam, so you get a nice crack that you're actually going to make, so that when you actually bust those two flats apart, it's not going to make a big mess. We also have this beautiful piece of chair rail right here, which we also want to take off. So Jonathan, I'm going to get you to just hop out for a second, because in a case like this, we could take a handsaw, and sometimes you'll take a handsaw and actually just cut it right on the wall. But a lot of times it's actually going to be easier if you were to cut this off, remove it entirely, cut it down to size, and then reapply it. And in this case, I don't think we're going to want to put this fantastic piece of trim back up. Just in the same way that I'm going to separate the two walls by cutting that seam, I'm also just going to cut up here and underneath. And it's going to mean that your paint isn't going to peel away as you pry off this piece. I'm just going to be using a cat's paw to do this. And you want to be careful while you're prying this. If this is really well attached, you don't want to be prying it right in the middle of a flat, because there's a chance you're actually going to break right through the skin of the flat itself. So I'm only going to be prying it where I know there's actually going to be pine to brace my pry. So, Jonathan, you want to take that? You can see this flat has had a few layers on it. And now we're just going to cut the seam. You don't have to go crazy. You mostly just want to score the paint and the tape that might be bridging that seam. You just brace the back of it, Jonathan. Okay, now these are ready to come apart.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the tools that you use when you're setting and standing and taking down flats. Your primary tool is your screw gun. This is an 18-volt drill, and one of the benefits is it's got all the power you're going to need in the world to work, but one of the detractors is it's so heavy, if your arms aren't pretty strong, it's going to be a real pain at the end of the day. I've always used an 18-volt drill, and my wrist, after 20 years of doing it, is slightly injured as a result. Your tool belt, you're going to have a holster for your drill. It's really handy to have a clip to hold the drill in place. The pouches on your belt, I always recommend getting pouches that have a certain amount of bagginess to them, but also don't get really big ones, because you're then going to fill them, and then they're going to weigh a lot. They're going to weigh a lot. These 3 pouches are great for me. Another tool you're obviously going to need is your hammer. Now, I've never been a fan of the metal ring that your hammer goes in, and if you do have one, if you're on a film set, it's important to tape it so you don't hear it jingling. What I've done is I've turned this rather ridiculous pouch that was meant to hold a tape measure into the pouch that I put my hammer in, so it's always quiet. S-wing hammers, wooden hammers, whatever. You don't need a massive hammer. You can't use a small hammer. So something in between. And since so many people own the same type of hammer, the S-wing, I put a mark on the back of mine, so the second I see it, I know it's mine. A bit box for in your toolbox, but in your pouch, it's always really handy to have a small little bit box that just sits in the pocket, and you can hold all your bits. Having a drill that actually has a place for all your bits is also pretty good. I always have a small chisel. Now, this is by no means an extremely sharp chisel, nor is it a very good chisel. I mean, it's a fuller, but it's been beaten up and it has some good dings in it, but it's nice and short, so I can drop it in my pouch and I don't have to worry about it. End cutters. These are super handy for pulling, for doing any re and shravy scenery you have to fix. And cat's paw. This little guy here for levering up flats, for popping apart flats, to use as a chisel if you need to, and then the little cat's paw on the other end to pull some fasteners. It's always a good idea to have some spare blades. And then this goes into when I was actually working in a studio putting up sets. I didn't have this, I just had a tool belt besides. But this is something I found extremely handy for what I'm teaching in the classroom. This is a Japanese nail set. It's got a bit of a rectangular end on this side so that you can hammer down narrow crown staples pretty easily, and then just another nail set on the other side, a normal one. Got a little pad there, markers. There's a punch, an automatic punch when it's spring-loaded for when you have to work into metal, and place to hold all your other kind of stuffs. This happens to be a multimeter. It has a laser on it, and it also has a flashlight. Pencils, pens, punch and a nail set. I have a multi-tool here. Another laser pointer, that's where I stick my phone. And then in here, pencil sharpener, a little adjustable square, and bevel gauge. Just because carrying around a big one, it's often a bit of a pain. But the big ones, you can't, when you have to do big work, you use the big ones. So my safety glasses, those are prescription glasses. Today I'm wearing contacts and behind these. And yeah, those are the tools that I recommend you use.